everyone. Deanna Andrew from Urban Green Lab here, and you are here for another edition of Sustainable Nashville Live. The purpose of this series is to open a dialogue between the public and organizations that are contributing to the great work around sustainability here in Nashville. So today I'm here with Jennifer Smith, horticulturalist from Metro Nashville Public Works. And a few reminders before we get started that if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. There is where you'll be able to find all of our previous interviews and more. And so just search Urban Green Lab and click the bell to subscribe. Also, Urban Green Lab is a nonprofit, and if you feel so inclined to support us, you can make a donation on our website at urbangreenlab.org, or you can text TEAM UGL, one word, to 44321 to get that donation link sent to your phone. So we will get started. So Jennifer, how are you doing today?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Good. We're happy to have you with us. So can we start with just telling us about what a horticulturalist is and some of the work that you do?
Yes. So my main focus here in Metro Nashville is the urban forest and tree canopy. But my degree in horticulture really prepared me well for that. When you study horticulture, you study the whole plant, the botany, how the mechanics of the tree or the plant works. Soils is very important. If your soils aren't right, your plant won't do well. Of course, there's insects and diseases that we study. Then there's the whole nursery industry, whether it's a greenhouse or production, nursery production, which is kind of fun. If you're interested in flowers, you know, that would be a way to grow flowers for the florist industry. Turf grass is a big component of it. And then we really got into woody plants, which is where my favorite subject came in, which are trees. And so we really focus on the canopy of Nashville, but in doing so, you have to go down to the individual trees and planting in their health. My degree actually is from the University of Tennessee, and it was in the School of Agriculture and Natural Resources. When I went so many years ago, it was called Ornamental Horticulture and Landscape Design. So I took a lot of design as well, which has been very, very helpful in my work here at Metro. Now the program, for those who might be interested in learning more about it, it's called Plant Science, and it covers a host of things. If you're interested in working in botanic gardens, just in the turf grass industry, again, with nurseries, they have individual tracks you can go on.
Great. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot out there. That seemed like a really diverse spread of industries and jobs that you can have in that field.
And they're all dynamic, and they're all good jobs. I mean, there's a lot of work out there. Even if you study woody plants, you become a professional arborist. That's a great profession. They can't graduate people enough from their turf grass management program. There's so much need, with soccer fields, and that's really important how the ball rolls on the field. It's a little bit, different. So they really need people knowing all that to graduate.
Yeah. Great. Well, my first question is, has COVID had much of an impact on the work that you do personally?
Well, my phone has rung off the hook because everyone's home now, and they're looking at projects that they've, thought, well, one day I'm going to talk about the urban forest and all. And so they're calling, and it's been great. It's been fascinating. And so we're really getting some great projects done in individual, like neighborhoods, like they want to do a neighborhood tree planting program, or in the right-of-way, which is where we in Public Works work, is that right-of-way, which is that area in front of your house. Usually the right-of-way is from the water main box to the street, or perhaps if you have a sidewalk, from the back of the sidewalk to the street, which can include a green strip. So people are wanting to know more about planting there, or that they have a tree issue, or things they've always wanted to know about trees. I'm getting a lot of calls, which has been fun, but surprising.
Yeah, sure. We see that a lot too. People home more often now, and so they're getting to projects, they're getting to things that they've always wondered about, and so they're reaching out about how to be more sustainable at home and those questions they have about their yard. It's great.
Exactly.
So you told us about your university experience, but tell us more about yourself and how you got interested in doing this.
I grew up in Nashville, and I've always been fascinated, of course, not just being outdoors, but I love the lay of the land and how it connects with the built environment.
Mhm.
And when my mother would take me to nurseries, she couldn't get me to leave. I just was fascinated looking at all the plants. And so I feel like it's been with me forever. Not everyone knows what they want to do at such a young age, but I was over at Cheekwood at the Botanic Garden volunteering as a teenager,
Mhm.
and going over there quite often before that, just fascinated with it. And I think it's been a good career. It's one of those things where if I did something else professionally or didn't work, I could always have it as my avocation in my own backyard of growing plants. And certain times in my life, I've grown more plants than others, but it's just, I love actually, for me, it's public horticulture. So it's working out with the people, getting them involved and interested in plants, and teaching them about plants. I've had the experience at the Memphis Botanic Garden. I was there for about 10 years, developing their programs and outreach, and getting people excited about planting in their own yards and teaching them that. And then later I moved back home to Nashville, and I was the state director of a nonprofit tree group, the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council. And that's impacts all cities, big and small, across the state, and developing their urban forestry program. So I was there for a long time, and just met the nicest people, but they're, passion, they have something they're passionate about. And there's so many opportunities for the general public, whether they're working in any field, there's opportunities for them to get involved in urban forestry in their community. Most, like here in Nashville, I coordinate the Metro Tree Advisory Committee. So there's a group like that in every city, big or small, like Franklin has one, for instance. And as a citizen, you can get involved in those issues, whether it's for planting or legislation, your tree ordinance, how to make that effective and stronger. So yeah, I think it's a good way to plug in as a citizen to make a difference.
Right. I definitely agree with that feeling that, sustainability is a big part of my own personal life, and that even if I didn't work in this, I would be doing it at home and working on it at home. And with plants, we have a lot of house plants that I'm trying to learn how to take care of. And then I've always loved to have a small vegetable garden in my yard, but I've never really branched out into trees and other plants. And so I'm hoping that I can do that in the coming years and learn more. And I'm glad you mentioned how citizens can get involved. That was going to be one of our questions, and we can talk
Yeah.
about it more too.
Yes,
Later.
I think it's you. I have a interesting. I'm older than most people in this field, and I get a lot of questions is how did you get in it? How did you? There wasn't anything getting into, because there wasn't any. The word sustainability, we barely even used the word environment back in the day when I was in college in the 70s and 80s. So we've come a long way. When I worked statewide, part of my job was to go in and talk to the elected officials in each city and just say trees are important. And we just were trying to get them to understand the importance of trees, and now they all get that. Now we're trying to figure out how to, enhance the urban forest, but we were just trying to get them to understand how important trees were. And, we worked statewide, and then up in DC, getting our elected officials up there to understand.
Right.
That was fun. Those are good years. We
Great.
really got a lot done, knocked on a lot of doors.
Done a lot of really good work. Well, lately you've been doing a lot of work combating the emerald ash borer infestation here in Davidson County. So can you tell us exactly what an emerald ash borer is and what it is doing to our county's ash trees?
Yes, I'm going to grab a brochure here. I wanted to show you this brochure. The Tree Advisory Committee put this brochure together, and that's what it looks like. But no, it's not that big.
Okay, good.
The emerald ash borer is about the size of a cooked grain piece of rice, so that's really minuscule. And it has been wreaking havoc across the country. And about 2002, it was started in, unfortunately, ground zero was in Michigan. And it was believed that in the packing crates of wood packing crates where they use ash wood, the larvae of this bug was in there. So it came over, maybe a crate that carried TV set or something like that, came over those big ships, and it came into Michigan. And since then it has just spread out. And it's been, the bug, the borer flies. So it has moved that way, but also it's moved around because people move firewood, where the point of that is that you should burn wood where you cut it and not move it, because you don't know what's in that wood. And it's they're been concentrating in Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky, and kind of going out that way. Then it leapfrogged all the way out to Denver. Well, of course, that was because someone moved wood. In fact, the first place in 2010 where it was found in Tennessee was outside of Knoxville at a truck stop. So someone had just dropped some wood off there, and there you go. 2014 was first found here in Davidson County, and it's gotten to the point where we're in the middle of it. There's just mass devastation right now of our ash trees. In the right of way, we're doing inventory. We have less than 2%. We're very amazed how fortunate we are so far of what we've inventoried. So if you have an ash tree, any citizen has an ash tree in that area we talked about, closer to the road, that right of way, we will take that down, and you can call our hub 311 and report that you have an ash tree. You can go on our website, trees.nashville.gov, and look at what's there, so you can determine some photos of do you even have an ash tree. But we do have some citizens that know they have ash trees in the right of way, and they're treating them. And if you are doing that, also call 311 and let us know, because we won't want to cut down your tree in that situation. But yeah, it's this tree, when you see the photos, they're such lovely trees. They have that beautiful diamond shaped bark that's a handsome gray, and they just get better looking with age. And the park that I walk through a lot out at Warner Parks, if you just walk through there, you see all the blue dots. And that's a lot of different trees, but that also includes the ash trees. And so we have to make a plan on what to do with the trees that are near a path or where people walk, hike, park, because as this tree gets older, dies, and it what happens is the water just simply can't get up into the top anymore, because the borer has the larvae, which is the first stage of the borer. It's in there eating the tissue of the wood. And by doing that, making channels through there, the water just physically can't get up anymore to the leaves, and it can't photosynthesize, needs to create its own food, which it does on the green leaves with sunlight. And so it just really shrivels up. This is the tree that they make the Louisville slugger out of. And yeah, that's sad. So what our citizens need to know is that you need to make if you have one, first you've got to decide if you have one.
That's what I was going to ask is how do you identify it? You mentioned the bark, but how can you identify an ash tree?
Well, and also when you're looking up into the tree, the ash tree actually has opposite branches. And so in this brochure you can download, I'm just going to show you here. You could see the opposite branches here. There's one side and one here. There's not too many trees that do that. The dogwood, which is small, and the maple, and then it's also another telltale sign is it has this leaflet. It's not one leaf, but that's the whole leaf, little leaflets on it.
Okay.
So there's that. Now, once you decide and you say, wow, I know it could potentially snap at the base, called the ash snap. At this point, the only real treatment is to do injections, which you have to hire someone to do that's certified to apply chemicals. Okay. And at this time of the growing season, if your tree it's suggested now, if the tree's not too bad, just to wait to the first of the growing season next year, because the treatment lasts for 2 years. And there was earlier, if you had a smaller ash tree, like 10 to 12 inches diameter, then you could do a soil drench or a bark spray. But at this time, those are not recommended anymore. It's just, it can't get enough in there. But you can just drive around, and we're going to be able to, unfortunately, drive around and see. I'll show you this picture. Well, it's kind of hard to see, but there's the blonding. There's a woodpecker pecking off the outside bark of the ash tree, and it's called flecking and blonding. You'll just be able to drive around and see that blonding on the trees, and you go, oh, that's an ash tree.
Okay.
So there's thousands of them in our parks,
Okay.
and that's really sad. It's going to change the whole demographic, what our parks are made of. One thing that I'm concerned about is when these trees die in forest, whether it's a park or your backyard or a farm, then there's sunlight that reaches the floor there, and invasives will say, ooh, that's honeysuckle privet, sunlight, they're going to try to get there and take that spot. So we really have to be aware of that and try to plant some seedlings in those spaces so that we don't get more invasive plants going.
Yeah, so that's something else that citizens can do is hopefully volunteer or help with parks planting new trees or new plants. And I want to ask, so now if you know you have an ash in front of your yard, how do you know if it is infested?
Well, right now we're seeing dieback, just kind of general dieback across the whole crown.
Okay.
Not just one branch, it's just dieback. But once your tree gets about 30% dieback, it's almost too late to treat it, because it's just it can never recover from that.
Okay.
And so that's why you need to be proactive in making your decision. And also, what if your neighbor has an ash tree that could fall onto your property? So those are things you need to have communications there and let them know. I will say, this has been fascinating to people, that if you have a tree that's between two pieces of property, whether it's 50-50, 80-20, both property owners are supposed to come together and make decisions about that tree. Okay. So that's something to take in consideration. But once it gets kind of brittle, and so at a certain point, the arborists are not able to climb it. That's one way that they take down trees. They climb up and then take the branches down. But because that gets too brittle, the insurance says, no, you can't climb that tree. You have to be able to get a bucket truck to that tree.
Okay.
And one of the things, again, that this brochure is at trees.nashville.gov. We have a webinar that's going to cover all of this and a lot more on September 22nd at 12 noon, and registration's required at that website. But there is a lot more to know and to be aware of. But what we also want is to say, okay, this is an epidemic and we're experiencing this, but we don't want people to not understand the full value of our urban forests and not plant trees back. So we really want to talk, to our citizens about planting back and, of course, caring for the trees. That's important. It's not just planting. You need to care. And one of the things that we talk about is what that might look like. So really, a newly planted tree needs your care, your attention for about 3 years, because you put that tree in the ground and it's like, where am I? What am I doing here? And so it's just kind of getting used to its new environment. So that first year we call it sleeping. That tree is sleeping.
Okay.
The next year, the roots are starting to say, okay, and they start going out into the new soil. So they creep. So it sleeps, creeps. And by the year 3, the root system is really out there and it has enough food source to leap. So it starts growing up. So it sleeps, creeps, and leaps. And that's a 3-year event. And that's why you really need to be out there paying attention and watering it during the growing seasons for 3 years. Make sure the water gets to the bottom of the root ball. And let's just say, like last August and September, we were having a drought of sorts. And so I would have recommended people watering their trees during times of drought. Let's just say your tree's been planted for 3, 4, 5 years. I'd still say let's put some water on it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's really good advice, because I think people get excited about planting a tree or having new plants in their yard, and then they don't think how long of a process it might be to take care of it. And so if they have any questions about that, or they need any assistance with learning about how to take care of it, can they reach out to you and reach out to your office?
Well, I can be available to help with that. I will say that there's a program that the Nashville Tree Foundation has, and what we'll probably talk a little bit more about all the opportunities in Nashville, but I will say that there are so many volunteer tree planting events. And they, about 2 or 3 years ago, they started a green shirt volunteer program. So these are people who really want to get involved with trees, and they'll say, I really want to get trained up. And then I will oversee a few volunteer tree crews that come in. Those are the people that, want a done in a day event. So they're not as invested in how to plant a tree right. But these volunteers get trained up and oversight the volunteers. So we know there's not that much you have to get right when you plant a tree, but the things you have to get right, you really have to get right.
Okay.
Like, for instance, most people don't understand that tree roots breathe. And so if you plant them too deep, they suffocate. And so the top of the root ball, you want it to plant at least 2 inches above grade. That's just one thing that's really important. So so people who want to get trained, the Tree Foundation's having a training coming up on September 12th, a Saturday in the morning, and you can go to their website and sign up for that.
Great, that's good to know. We'll include the website and everywhere for people to learn these resources.
Yes.
Great.
So so I just think the Emerald Ash Borer, this is a big deal. I will say that in my profession, this is one of the biggest issues I will deal with. And it is serious, and that's why people really need to be aware. We've been out talking to all sorts of groups and just saying, hey, great, you don't have one, but because you know about this, can you let your neighborhood know about it so everyone can be proactive? That's what's key.
Yeah, I know, because I hadn't heard about it either until I think a meeting where you were speaking. And so, yeah, it's something that I think if you're not really focusing on trees in your day-to-day life, it may not be something you know about. So I'm glad you're sharing that with us. And I wanted to ask about the borer. Does it affect any other types of trees, or only the ash tree?
Well, fortunately, it's all native ash trees, not the Asian. So that's a good thing. But yeah, so we can just focus on our ash.
Okay, good.
But it does affect all of the native ash trees.
Okay.
And it will kill them. Okay. It will kill the trees unless they're treated.
Okay, so yeah, we need to identify them, and then if they're in that public land, call you and have them identified and then have them treated. Is there any other large threat to our urban canopy in Nashville besides the borer?
Well, urbanization. We're losing so many of our trees to growth and development. Right. And we have our tree ordinances. We just strengthen our tree ordinance to help with our canopy. But, it's every section of the city of Davidson County pretty much is in growth mode. So we're losing a lot through that. I also will say that the pop-up storms that we're having now through climate change is really taking down a lot of trees. Of course, the tornado doesn't help at all, but the winds are taking down. And frankly, a lot of our subdivisions in Nashville are at the age where the trees that were planted with them, are 75 years old-ish, 50, 70 and on, and they're just dying of old age. They do have a lifespan. It's interesting out more in the neighborhoods where there's more soil versus the downtown area. The trees, of course, live longer. And when you get closer to the downtown, there's just no way that can be that big tree that you have in your backyard. That's just the way it goes. But we're so appreciative of the years that those trees are working for us downtown. So between urbanization, old age, and the emerald ash borer. I think another thing that's affecting our trees is the lack of tree care. And if you get a good structural prune in year 3 of planting the tree. So structural prune is, let's say you have 2 branches that are close together, or 2 dominant leaders growing up. Well, as those branches or trunks get bigger and bigger as they grow up, the crotch between them, it's going to cause a problem there, and the wind blows and it can split off.
Okay.
So getting good tree care, and when other diseases come in, a lot of us just don't have our trees treated. They're amazing. Trees are amazing. They don't, they have ways to, if they have a wound, they have a way to compartmentalize that off so it doesn't affect the whole tree. But they've got limits too.
Yeah.
And by all means, not to top a tree. So topping a tree is when somebody comes in and just comes and cuts just like that across all the branches. And what it does is a couple of things. First, a tree has to have branches to have leaves to produce the food. So you've just cut off the way the tree feeds itself. And you open up a lot of wounds that a tree can recover from, but you have too many and too big at one time. So there's too much energy having to go to seal those off. And then you don't get the food production. So there's crown reduction techniques the arborist can do that can reduce the crown of the tree by going to the crotches and pruning, but not having to top that.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting how that they have methods for doing that the right way. And so just making sure we're doing it the right way. So you mentioned, go ahead.
I will just say I get a lot of questions about the way that NES does their tree work, and they're really not topping. They're doing keeping the structural integrity of a tree. But we're hosting our tree talk on September 15th at 12 noon. It's a webinar, but we're going to have an arborist from NES, and we're going to be talking about those questions that our citizens have. I get quite a bit about, NES did this to this tree. Well, there's a space limit for trees and power lines. And so what is that? And how do we mitigate those tree issues?
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you're having a whole session on that, because I'm sure people do ask a lot of questions. That's really great. So you have mentioned a lot of ways that citizens can get involved with either, protecting the tree cover or planting trees, or getting involved in their local councils to help with policies and protections. Is there anything else you want to remind people that they can do to help with our tree cover?
Sure. So I think some of the work that I do through the Metro Tree Advisory Committee, we have educational exhibits at a lot of the events in Nashville. We give away tree seedlings, the lawn and garden show, and at the Earth Day, etc. We want to get it where our citizens value trees. If they understand the value of trees, then they're going to make good tree stewards. It's not, then we don't have to say, you should plant trees. They want to plant trees. They understand why they should plant trees. So that's important. So, my bumper sticker is trees make a difference. They do. Some of the values of trees that they cool our urban areas. They remove carbon dioxide. So just think of it as the lungs of the earth. And I was out recently with a gentleman in Donaldson who unfortunately lost all of his trees in his yard due to the tornado. And he said, interestingly, that his utility bill went up $115 from last year. And, it's saving there, but just think of all the less electricity that has to be produced somewhere for the savings. So if we all plant trees, on the south side of our house, plant a deciduous tree, and it provides shade in the summer, the leaves fall down, and then the sun can get to your house and warm it in the winter. Or on the north side, plant some evergreens to protect it from the north winds. These incremental issues really help save energy collectively, as we all did this street by street. They intercept the rainwater. Just a medium-sized maple tree will intercept 1,500 gallons of water a year. So
Wow.
the rain comes down, instead of hitting the ground and running and flooding downstream, it just kind of floats down because of the trees. So they add so much. The particulate pollution that they hold on their leaves and absorb on their leaves, that's the stuff that we don't breathe, and that really helps us. Skincare, we're all in the shade. Don't have to worry about skincare. There's so much research done in areas where there are trees that even the crime rate is lower, because there's a sense that someone cares about that area. Property values go up, and trees are the wildlife homes, the squirrels and the birds and all the insects. This is where they live. So there's so many reasons to plant trees and to care for them. And it doesn't, whatever gets you, whatever statistic or data gets you, whatever motivates you, they do make a difference. So we want all Nashvillians to value trees, so they will plant and care for them. And so they can get involved. We have a national, several initiatives going on. We have a citywide Root Nashville campaign, and we are on our way. We've planted almost 11,000 trees to reach 500,000 trees. So we need everyone getting involved with that. But our goal is to plant 500,000 trees by 2050. Now, if you plant one in your backyard or front yard or wherever, you can go on their website and you map it, and that's where it gets counted. And we encourage everyone, because we've got to count the trees that do get planted. And you'll have a little dot on the map that says that's your tree. The Nashville Tree Foundation we talked about earlier, they've been involved in Nashville over, I think, 30 years or so. They have that Green Shirt volunteer program, training program. And this fall, they're having a host of tree giveaways at different farmers markets and tree plantings. And their big event every year, it's so much fun, is it's a relief day. And it's always the Saturday before Thanksgiving. And mark your calendars, come out. And I will say that we also have the Nashville Tree Conservation Group Corps. They're working on creating an arboretum on Shelby Avenue in East Nashville, and you can go on their website and they have a tree sale. And this is the 4th year, I think, that they've had the sale, and it makes it so easy. You just order it online. You can have it dropped at your house, and you can plant it, or you can have an upcharge and have it planted for you. But there's small, medium, large, evergreen, deciduous trees, and they do a really good job. These are high quality trees, and they're really getting trees, because in Metro, we own less than 5% of the property in Davidson County. So if we just focus on not big difference. So it's really uniting planting our yards and encouraging our neighbors, and that's how we're going to get to our goal. But I want to note this is very important, that all these groups have worked hard early on their COVID plan of how to deal with volunteers in the COVID time, and they're doing a good job. So they do have everyone's health and safety and well-being in mind. So that's something that people can say, okay, great, I will, sign up. I need to get out. I need to do something in the community. This is a great place, because you're outdoors for one thing.
Yeah.
And that helps, and you're doing something. I know I was involved years ago at the tree plant, and I was walking out, and there's these 3 guys standing there talking. I just overheard one say, I really feel good about this, what I did today. And I was like, oh, but, and he was a young man. I don't know why I didn't expect that out of him, but, those trees he can bring back if he ever gets married, his children, his grandchildren, say, hey, look what I did. I helped. I did something positive in the community. So it does, your simple act of planting a tree is making a difference. So yeah.
That's a perfect volunteer activity for right now. I'm glad that they are taking the good precautions. So that's a perfect activity to get outside and do that. So I think we are going to go ahead and ask our last question for you, which you've already let us know about a lot of other meetings coming up, a lot of other ways people can get involved. But I'll ask you, what's your sustainable vision for the city of Nashville?
My vision, my sustainable vision for me and so many of my fellow tree advocates is to have a healthy, diverse tree canopy. We don't want to plant one species and have that next, ash tree episode come in and lose that one. So we want to plant canopy trees anywhere where you don't have overhead power lines. Go for the canopy trees. But we want succession, so you can't just wait till all the trees are gone to say, oh, I'm going to start planting trees. You want trees at different ages, so we never have that heat island, hot city. And again, I just get back to, we want all citizens to value trees so they will plant and care for them forever. And I have a few tree quotes I would like to close with.
Please.
I am the Lorax. I speak for the trees have no tongues. So that's what we all are, is we're out there speaking on behalf of the trees. You can become a Lorax. No shade tree, blame not the sun, but yourself. That's a Chinese proverb, and that's something, you've got to think about. So you can be part of the solution. And people who will not sustain trees will soon live in a world which cannot sustain people. That's a lot of food for thought there, but I just encourage everyone to get out and be part of the efforts, all the efforts that these groups, great groups, have worked so hard on behalf of our trees. Get involved with supporting them financially or coming out to their plantings, because they are making a difference and we can all participate.
Thank you, Jennifer, for those quotes and for all of your information you shared with us today. We're going to include the links and everything in our chat and the comments of this video, and we hope that everyone will get involved. I'm really encouraged with how much there really is going on in our city and the surrounding area. Yeah. So thank you again for being here with us today. Next week, we'll be interviewing Renee Barker, Vice President of Tennessee Women in Green. And if you have any questions for Renee or recommendation for an organization that you'd be interested in learning more about, please email Patrick, my colleague, at patrick@urbangreenlab.org. And before you go, make sure to sign up for our newsletter so you can stay up to date on all of the latest Urban Green Lab news and the series that we have for Sustainable Nashville Live. And as always, until next time, remember to live sustainably. Thanks.
Thank you.